Rules. We all have them. Don't text your ex. Don't eat the entire pizza in one sitting. For me, the rules are a bit darker. Only kill killers. Don't get caught. Simple, right? Yeah, not always. Sometimes things got messy and the code just went out the window. I'm not proud of it, but hey, I'm human. Mostly. Stick around, and I'll tell you all about the times I said, screw it, to Harry's code. Oscar Prado. The first time I broke the code was with Oscar Prado. I was after Freebo, a scumbag drug dealer who'd already killed 2 girls and dodged the system because of some bureaucratic screw-up. Typical. I tracked him down to his hideout, but when I got there, Freebo was fighting with this random guy, and before I knew it, I was in the mix. That guy, Oscar Prado. Turns out he was the younger brother of Miguel Prado, a big-shot assistant district attorney. Oscar came at me with a bayonet. Self-defense, right? But as he lay there dying, for the first time I questioned myself. Did I just kill an innocent? It messed with my head. I couldn't just walk away, so I dug into Oscar's life, even went to his funeral. Nothing justified what I'd done. That kill led to my friendship with Miguel. We bonded over finding Oscar's killer, but Miguel never realized it was me, until it was too late. I still remember telling him, I killed my brother. I killed yours too. By then, Miguel was wrapped in plastic. Funny how things come full circle, isn't it? 2. Nathan Martin. Season 3 gave me a moment I'm not exactly proud of, but hey, sometimes you've got to break a rule or two to protect the people you love. It started when I noticed Aster talking to a guy way too old for her. Just a harmless chat, right? Wrong. Something about it didn't sit right, so I dug into the guy's past. Turns out Nathan Martin was a full-blown predator with a record that made my blood boil. Here's the catch. Nathan hadn't killed anyone, which meant he didn't fit Harry's code. My hands were tied until I saw him snapping photos of Aster at the beach. That was it. I confronted him, told him to back off, but he just smirked. Big mistake. That night I paid Nathan a visit. No plastic wrap, no kill room, just raw instinct. It wasn't my usual style. Quick, messy, personal. This wasn't about feeding my dark passenger. It was about protecting my family. On my way out, I grabbed some milk from his fridge. Rita needed it, and I'm nothing if not efficient. Okay, pause. Before we dive deeper into my, let's call them questionable choices, I've got a small favor to ask. If you're enjoying this little confession session, take a second to like this video and subscribe to this channel. It's quick, painless, and way more socially acceptable than what I'm about to describe next. Done? Good. Thanks. Now, let's get back to breaking the code. Camila Fig. Camila Fig. That was a tough one. She wasn't some monster lurking in the shadows or a predator slipping through the cracks. She was family, in a way. Camila worked at Miami Metro forever and knew me since I was a kid. She even knew about my brother being the ice truck killer, which, yeah, that was a surprise. But she didn't judge. Instead, she saw me for what I really was, and still trusted me. But cancer had her bedridden and in constant pain, and she made a heartbreaking request. She wanted me to end her suffering. At first, I couldn't do it. Killing is well, let's call it my specialty. But Camila didn't fit the code. She wasn't evil. She didn't deserve it. After some reflection, I decided to honor her wish. I brought her one last piece of key lime pie, her favorite. But this one was laced with poison. Watching her smile as she took that last bite, It was one of the few times I felt human, capable of empathy, connection, maybe even love. Jonathan Pharaoh. One of the most haunting was Jonathan Pharaoh, a creepy fashion photographer who had Predator practically written on his forehead. When one of his model's arms turned up in a crocodile, I connected the dots. His disturbing photos, his reputation for mistreating models, it all pointed to him being a killer. At least, that's what I told myself. I moved fast, too fast. I skipped the usual thorough vetting. The evidence was circumstantial, sure, but his whole vibe, it screamed guilty. So, I did what I do best. I brought him to my kill room, gave him the usual speech, and made sure he wouldn't hurt anyone else. Only problem, he didn't hurt anyone in the first place. Turns out, it was his assistant, Timothy Brand, who was the real killer. Yeah, I'd killed the wrong guy. Pharaoh wasn't a good person by any stretch, but he didn't deserve to die, not by my hand. Rankin. Losing Rita messed me up. Trinity didn't just take her life. He ripped mine apart too. I was drowning in grief, guilt, and anger, and I had no idea what to do with it. Usually Harry's code helps me keep it together, but after Rita, it felt like the code didn't even matter anymore. So, there I was, at this sketchy little waterside store, barely holding it together, when this guy Rankin starts running his mouth. He was rude, obnoxious, the kind of guy who lives to annoy everyone around him. I wasn't in the mood. When he headed to the bathroom, something inside me just snapped. I followed him. No prep, no plastic, no code. I grabbed a grappling hook, don't ask me why that was lying around, and killed him. It wasn't clean, and it definitely wasn't planned. But in that moment, I didn't care. Norm. Oh, Norm. Poor, nosy Norm. He ran the Shady Lane Motel where I stayed while tracking down Jonah Mitchell in Nebraska. At first, he seemed like your average, overly curious motel owner, but then he found my knives. Big mistake. Instead of minding his own business, he assumed I was some rich guy and tried to extort me for 10 grand. 10 grand. For some knives. Now, normally, I'd handle things a little more delicately. But this wasn't exactly a normal day. My brother Brian, well, his ghost, had been riding shotgun in my head, egging me on to let loose, and let loose I did. 1 minute, Brian was suggesting a pitchfork. The next, Norm was dead. It wasn't planned, and it definitely wasn't part of Harry's code, but there it was. Could I have found another way out of that mess? Maybe. But when someone threatens to expose what I do, my options tend to shrink real fast. Alberto. Season 6 had one of those rare moments where I tossed Harry's code out the window. I'm stuck in the middle of the ocean, stranded after the Doomsday Killer's latest drama. A boat of Cuban smugglers shows up and I think, finally, some luck. But nope. Their leader, Alberto, turns out to be a real piece of work. He starts demanding valuables from everyone, and when a pregnant woman can't deliver, he pulls a gun on her. Yeah, not on my watch. Now normally, I'd have my whole plastic-wrapped ritual planned out, but this wasn't exactly the time for that. So I grabbed a boat hook, thank you nautical equipment, and drove it straight into Alberto's stomach. Quick, messy, and very uncode-like. This wasn't about my dark passenger. It wasn't about satisfying some urge. It was about protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. And yeah, Harry might have raised an eyebrow, but deep down, I think he'd be proud. Clint McKay. Clint McKay, Hannah's dad, if you can even call him that, was the definition of toxic, manipulative, abusive, and always looking for a payday. The man had spent Hannah's entire life tormenting her emotionally and financially, And then he had the audacity to show up again, trying to squeeze her for $20,000. Here's the thing. I knew Clint wasn't going to change. Hannah held on to some tiny, flickering hope, but I could see right through him. So yeah, I broke the code for this one, wrapped him up in plastic, just like always. But this was personal. Clint knew it too. He even tried to taunt me, saying, "You've got the devil inside you, boy." My response? No, I think it's just me. When I dropped his remains into the ocean, I couldn't resist one last jab. Sink or swim, Daddy. It felt fitting. Was it for Hannah? For me? Maybe both. Either way, Clint was gone, and I don't regret it. Some people just need to disappear. Andrew Briggs. Deb was spiraling hard, caught up in guilt after killing Maria Lagerta. She started hanging out with this guy, Andrew Briggs, an armed robber she was supposed to be investigating. Instead, she got pulled into his chaos, doing drugs and hooking up with him. Yeah, not her best moment. I couldn't just sit back and watch her self-destruct, so I tracked her down. Turns out, Briggs had his own problems. A hitman named El Sapo was after him. I warned Deb, but of course, Briggs overheard, got all defensive, and things escalated fast. 1 minute, we're arguing, and the next, he's coming at me with a knife. Instinct kicked in, and well, let's just say Briggs didn't make it out of that room. Was it self-defense? Sure, but did it fit Harry's code? Not even close. Briggs wasn't a killer, just a criminal. Still, I'd do it again to protect Deb. Deborah Morgan. Deb, my sister. My anchor. My biggest headache. But also the only person who ever saw all of me. The darkness, the light, the whole messy picture, and stuck around anyway. Losing her was the hardest thing I've ever faced. When Deb got shot and ended up in a vegetative state, I knew what she'd want. She'd told me once, "Shoot me if I ever get like that." At the time, I laughed it off. I mean, come on, Deb, really? But in that hospital room, she wouldn't want to live that way, and I couldn't leave her like that. So, I made the choice. I turned off her life support. Carrying her body out to sea was like carrying my entire world in my arms. As I let her sink beneath the waves, it felt like I was saying goodbye to more than just Deb. I was letting go of any hope that I could ever have a normal life. She was my last connection to humanity, and without her, well, what was left of me? Deb's death broke me. It confirmed what I'd always feared. Everyone I care about ends up dead. So I left. For her. For me. For what little soul I had left. So, what did we learn today? That even I, Dexter Morgan, sometimes wing it? That Harry's code wasn't exactly foolproof? Or that maybe I need to work on my decision-making skills? Yeah, probably all of the above. Look, I might not be a role model, but at least I'm honest. Well, most of the time. Thanks for hanging out and indulging my little trip down memory lane. Until next time, keep your impulses in check. Or don't. I'm not here to judge. Unless, of course, you kill people.